if you knew you were enough? What would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, Suzette Birnard. Hello, everybody. This is Suzette, your life coach and relationship solutionist, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Enough Factor podcast. Today, our focus is on what? Drum roll. Friendships. Yes, I have the great pleasure of unpacking this rich and luscious topic with none other than personal coach Cathy Counsel. But first, a hearty welcome to my Enough Warriors, subscribers, followers, and even you stealth people. Yes, you stealth people that follow me on the down low. I see you. But I want to tell you that you are the heart. All of you are the heart of this podcast. And I'm always happy that you tune in week after week. If you're new, this podcast helps you to redefine what makes you enough in life and in love on your own terms. We do it by amplifying three critical factors. I call them three critical factors of enoughness. They are your voice, your value, and your vision. And I found that when these are working in tandem, you experience love and life in a brand new way. That's why I'm so glad that Cathy is here. We had a chance to talk about friendships prior to coming on, and I just knew that you all needed to hear what we were talking about. But let me tell you a little bit about Cathy. Cathy is a certified life coach who coaches women to love who they are and create friendships that they love. Friends are the family you get to choose for yourself. So she helps you to love your choices. Accountability is her superpower because she holds you accountable to yourself, your friends, and relationships. Because creating deep connections is just as essential to life as breathing, Cathy leads by example. She creates deep connections with people in her circle and helps her clients do the same in theirs. So join me in giving a hearty Enough Factor podcast welcome to Cathy Counsel. Hi, Cathy.
Hi, Suzette, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm super excited.
Thank you so much for saying yes. As I was saying earlier, we had such a great conversation about friendship. And you know how we always be teasing that Patrice Washington snatches your edges?
Yes.
Girl, after our conversation, my wig that was tilted was sitting up straight with hairpins in it. I said, that girl got me all the way right. So I cannot wait for my listeners to hear this conversation.
Wonderful. Let's jump in.
Where
we left off.
Hey, but first, with season 3 of this podcast, I decided to start the conversation by asking my guests a really deep question.
Okay.
One I'm so excited about asking you, and I call it Truth and Dare.
Ooh.
Now, the good news is it's not your traditional truth or dare. The bad news is you don't get to decide which one you want to answer. With mine, you have to answer my deep probing question, right? So here goes. What is a truth that friendship required you to see and dared you to take radical action on?
Oh my. I Love it. I love this question. I love it. And it goes right to the heart of my story about why I chose to focus on friendship in my coaching. And it came from a point where I had reached so many levels in my career, and I was evolving, and my personal growth was like on 10. And then I would try to tell my friends, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this, you should do this. And they were like, yeah, that's nice for you, but that's not what I want to do. And I was like, oh my God, how do you not want to get better? How do you not want to improve? And I would just build with all this frustration because I wanted us all to move at the same pace, which was my pace, which we'll get into about how we think about things, right? I was like, everyone should be moving at this pace. And here we should be moving together. And it was creating such frustration in my relationships. I was getting frustrated with them. I was frustrated with myself because I felt like I was slowing down or not being true anymore. And I felt like they were holding me back. And all of this was in my head because of the rules I had for my friends. I was like, we should all be doing this. I'm doing it, you should do it. So that is definitely a truth that my friendship showed to me. And the dare was for me to really confront that and look at it. And it was very hard because I started to feel like I'm going to lose all of my friends. We can't relate. And I also felt like it was something I couldn't talk to them about. Like, how do I tell them, you're frustrating me?
That didn't go over well that way.
No, you really have to look at it. And I felt like you don't tell your friends you're holding me back, And so what I started to do, the dare that really helped me take things to the next level, was really look inwardly. I changed how I thought about the things we were doing. And then I changed how I was reacting as a result of that. So I was, in fact, creating all of this turmoil in the friendship and blaming it on them.
Yeah. And that was the part that you said that made my wig get straight. Because you know how we always say, we're asking for a friend and we really are the friend.
Yes.
That we're asking for. And and it was good because the whole thing about the rules.
Yes.
And I had to sit and think about that. I do the same thing, that you have these rules of what being a friend is, and or you think you know what other people want you to be because you are their friend. And instead of you writing that definition and informing them, you let them write your definition and then you resent it because it doesn't work for you.
Yes, it goes both ways. You have an idea of what good friendship is, and you've written all these rules in your head of, well, my best friend does this, a good friend does that, a friend of mine would never say this. And as soon as someone sort of crosses that line unintentionally, right, because they don't know what you're thinking, you're like, well, you're not my friend. You're not being a good friend. And you may not even say anything to them. And to your point, it's the reverse. Your friends have their own set of rules that they are also looking at you and saying, well, I expect you to behave this way. I expect you to do these things because you're my friend. And you can feel the pressure of that because some people really show it. They may actually tell you, well, if you were my friend, you wouldn't speak to that person because I don't speak to that person. Or if you were my friend, they are actually telling you the rules that they have in their head for friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And so you feel the pressure of that if you don't know how to manage the relationship, if you don't know how to manage that this is their thoughts and how they carry their life versus who you are and your values. So we don't have to conform to every rule that someone else has for a friendship.
Yeah, because we talked about the 10-gallon
Yes.
versus the 2-gallon friendships. Where y'all, the 10-gallon is you have all this capacity. You are a 10-gallon container. And so I don't think it makes you necessarily needy to be a 10-galloner. Well, you're not needy if the other person has 10 gallons too. Right? And I think we were talking, it was like the difference between the 10-gallon and the 2-gallon. And you had even said, if you both are 2-galloners, it's fine. Right. But when it's mismatched, it becomes problematic. Can you talk about that some more?
Yeah. So to your 10-gallon and your 2-gallon, the problem is we all think in our head, we know what a friend is, and we're working from our own perspective. And to stick with our analogy of this 2-gallon container for water and this 10-gallon container for water, if you are both at 2 gallons, that exchange of friendship is going to feel equal and abundant because you're at the same level. But if in fact, where one person is operating from a 2-gallon and the other person has a 10-gallon, the relationship is going to feel uneven in both directions. The 2-gallon person may feel over flooded with the expectations of the person who has 10 gallons. And the 10-gallon person is going to feel like this person is not contributing enough to this relationship. I do way more. And there's the mismatch. And the unfortunate part, as a rule, we never really talk about where we are with our friendships. So we are just like, this person doesn't do enough, or I do everything in the friendship. Or you get those evolutions of, you're the strong friend, you're the 10-gallon, and you're constantly. And this poor person over here with their 2-gallon can't really fill you up the way you need. So you feel constant emptiness. So it's really about that mismatch that you have. And if you are a 2-gallon, you may want to find other 2 gallons or 4 gallons because you want to stretch. Maybe you want to grow. But it's very hard at first to be from 2 to 10 and vice versa. If you're 10 and you want to just pour it all on, you're going to flood that poor 2-gallon, right? It's just the water is going to be overflowing everywhere. They're not going to be able to keep up. They're going to feel like they're drowning. They're going to feel like they're lost themselves under all that water if you were for the reverse way. So it is about finding a match for you and that your understanding of the friendships are comparable, if not equal, right?
So how do you do that? Because it sounds so good with us talking about it. But in real life situations, though, Cathy, it's almost like you're walking along and you all are getting along just fine and things are going pretty good. And then all of a sudden, it's like you come to this impasse or something happens to shake you both awake.
Yes.
And at that point, how do you handle it when that happens? What do you do?
It is about what you do in the moment that happens.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you sort of like the generic story. What usually happens is something happens and both of you may have an experience where it's like, oh, well, that was odd. That's it. Huh. Yes, exactly. That was odd. But what people tend to do is sort of internalize it, think about it, but they don't say anything. And here comes another time. So now it's twice. And you start building your own story about why that happens. Instead of saying, when this happened, I thought that was odd. I didn't understand it. Can we talk about this? You catch it when it's early and easy. And what usually happens is we tend to bypass the first time, maybe the second time. By the third time, we've written our own story of why that person is doing that to us or doing that around us. And then by the fifth time, we start creating false boundaries, right? Because we're not even telling them, I don't like it when you smoke in front of me. So it's a fairly simple example. If you have a friend that smokes, you don't want them to smoke in your car, you don't want them to smoke in your house, but you've never told them. And then all of a sudden, you're like, well, we can go to dinner, but you need to get your own ride. Now, it's not that you want them to get their own ride. You don't want them to smoke in your car. So you need to be able to have that conversation at what the real issue is and really talk about that and say, I'm happy to give you a ride, but there's no smoking in my car. So I would appreciate it if you want to ride with me, smoke before or after you get out of my car. That's having a clear conversation about the true issue that's bothering you and setting a boundary that lets them know if you're going to give them a ride, these are the conditions under which it could occur. Instead, the scenario, what I said was, well, you have to figure out how to get there yourself, right? So now your friend is like, I don't understand. We used to ride together all the time. I'm so confused. And then all of a sudden you're standoffish, and that creates a whole nother story in their head that they're going to create. Yeah. So really the way to solve it is when things happen and you get that little tickle, it just didn't land right or it just didn't sit right, you go ahead and talk about it while it's just it's not even a thing yet. It's just the beginning of a misunderstanding.
Oh, Cathy, I'm getting ready to out myself. See, you doing it to me again. And the thing with me, that's very easy if I don't know you well, or if there hasn't been a label put on our interaction. If the label that's been put on us is we're friends, or the label, whatever label it is, if there's some type of friendship label or obligatory label, it makes it more difficult. You would think it'd make it easier because you're friends, right? But I find that for me, it's harder for me to be that upfront at the moment it happens with a friend. And I think it's because I'm so disappointed that something didn't land the way I thought it would, because we are friends.
Yes, and that goes back to your rules.
Yeah.
Expectation. So when you feel let down about what a friend does, or you feel disappointment, that's a good moment for you to, when you have that feelings are like warning alarm systems. There's something that's going on with you. There's something in your mind that you need to look at. And so if you have that feeling of being let down and being disappointed, you can use that as a warning signal that, okay, I must have had an expectation. What did I expect? Was it appropriate for me to have an expectation? Was this something that we discussed and agreed on so that we do have the same expectation? Or is it something that I just had in my manual for my friend that they must do these things? And so you use that as a real trigger. And I want to touch on the other point that you brought up, how it's much harder for you to do with friends or coworkers or partners or people that you have put this label on than, say, a stranger, right? That you bumped into and there's a misunderstanding, and you're more willing to clear that up. Mm-hmm. And the reason is there's a level of vulnerability that you have to do that with people you know. You can almost, without exposing yourself at all, do that with a stranger, right? There's no level of expectation between you and someone you don't know beyond broad societal courtesies, right? But it's easier, right? You're not exposing yourself as much as you can with a friend, because on the other side of that, even if it's the smallest thing, there's a part of your mind that realizes you might feel something uncomfortable. And that's usually what creates the hesitation. No one wants to feel those uncomfortable feelings, so they brush it off. Oh, it's a little thing. I'd rather not talk about it. I don't want to make a big thing out of it. And in fact, it just goes away because it's there the next time something else makes you a little uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And it's risking, it's like you feel like they hold you in regard.
Yeah.
And if you tell them how you really feel, you risk losing your cool points. Whatever they had, whatever you that they fell in love with and wanted to be a friend with, you're afraid if you tell them how you really feel, they're going to be like, they're going to in some way shame you.
Yes.
Yes. Or make you feel, or guilt you.
If you think about it, if your friend was vulnerable with you, you wouldn't shame them. But of course, the story we tell ourselves is, I let myself be vulnerable, I'm going to feel shame, that I even thought this, that I felt this way. So what I try to get people to realize is that we're creating the story of what our friend thinks in that moment. We're not even giving them the opportunity to be themselves, to be a friend to us.
That is so true, because you said it. If somebody told me that something I did bothered them, or they wanted to clear something up with me, I'd feel honored that they cared enough about the relationship to want to make sure it's right, even if it's something like, oh girl, I didn't mean anything, but just the simple fact. As a matter of fact, I had a friend tell me that. She said the very fact that you wanted to make sure, you didn't want to leave it up to assumption, you didn't want to leave a door open that could be exploited down the road because we didn't get it cleared up. She said that made me feel even more valuable and even more safe with you.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, because when people respond in that way, it lets you know, okay, we have the same value of what keeping a friendship authentic and safe means.
Yes, and it creates a deeper level of trust in the friendship. If you start with sharing a simple truth or something that makes you feel a little vulnerable, but this person receives it, listens to you, you can clear the air. The next time you have something, you will feel a little more inclined to share with them, because you've built up this experience where you start to build trust because it was well received. So that's how you get over the big hurdles down the line. What happens is most friendships or relationships that go bad later is because both parties have been building up all of this stuff that they're not talking about. And when it gets to this point where they have this blowout, it's not the one thing anymore. It's however many other things they never spoke about. And that is how 10 years of friendship can blow up. You say it was just one thing, and then all of a sudden we're not friends anymore. And that's really not how it works. It's about all the little things that we ignore and just think that they're going away. We back burner them, But as soon as you get to something big, they all come rushing to the front. So you really want to pay attention and to start your relationship off right. It was great, Suzette, that you started that relationship off right with asking and level setting so that you both knew where you stood and you could carry that going forward. Now you're a person that they know they can talk to and get your perspective. So you stay sort of level.
Yeah. Because I think, and I'll admit it, for me, I did not really know how to cultivate friendships. I knew how to be friendly.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't know how to have deep, abiding friendships because I grew up in a household that was pretty much sheltered. It was school and church.
Okay.
School and church. And I had friends at school, but I didn't go to their house. They didn't come to mine. So outside of school, we really didn't have any other dealings. Most of my friendships were in the church. You know, that was the belief back then. Yes. And then even with my sisters, our friendships, the whole sibling rivalry, the whole back and forth, I don't think we learned what true friendship, true sisterhood really was. And so even though I was very friendly, we all learned how to be very friendly, but I never quite understood the parameters of friendship because whenever I would show up as myself, I was told I was going to hell by my church, or it was the devil. The devil. That's just the pure devil. You need to pray that thing out. So it's like when you grow up and everything that's authentic about you is something wrong with it, then you kind of take cues from other people as to what's acceptable and what's not, only to find yourself down the road feeling some kind of way, but you don't feel like you have the right that way because it's always damns you to hell, or outside denied. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think I am just beginning to connect the dots and starting to risk with valuable friendships, starting to risk saying, I want to check and make sure we're okay. Because this, and I want to make sure we're okay. And I'm finding the people that respond well to it, I feel more comfortable with. The people that respond in a way that, that's kind of like, oh, no, we're good. And they go on, but something doesn't quite feel right. Then I'm kind of learning to let people teach me where they are. And then for me to decide, is this going to work for you? Nothing wrong with them. But is this going to work for you? Or is it not? And giving myself permission to say, I'm not going to end the relationship, but you don't get all of my 10 gallon.
Yes, that's exactly the point. You just said so much there, especially about how so many of us are raised to be in these little boxes. And in your case, your box was family and church, right? Mm-hmm. And it may not be the same for everyone, but you have your upbringing and you have how you grew up and what you learned to be in that experience. And as we get into adulthood, we're all bringing all of our different little upbringings together and trying to find friends or just trying to find a group to fit in with as best possible. And I love that you've reached this point where you are being authentically you. And that's when you can genuinely create friendships with people that you love and that love you, because now you are really showing up. Before that, some packaged version labeled Suzette was showing up.
Yeah.
And until you truly accept and be yourself authentically, and I know I hear that phrase a lot, but you really have to do what really is truly naturally you. And then when you make friends that have met the real you, not the packaged you, not the corporate you, not the good church Suzette, not little sister Suzette, not big sister Suzette. They have met Suzette. Then those are the friendships that start off with the right foot, Mm-hmm. And that's so much of what I do is helping people sort of release some of the thoughts about way they have to be. That's why the first step in creating great friendships is creating a great friendship with yourself. Have so much love for yourself and show up authentically. You worry less about whether this person can accept that. And it's just like you said, you can tell by how they react whether or not they're going to accept who you are. And you get to decide, is that someone you want in your life? But now you have really shown who you are. And it's amazing how far in life, into adulthood, we get.
I know, because I'm 60, my God, 60 years. 60, Cathy, truly, 60. I'm like, Jesus, I know, I never thought I was slow.
And you're not. And some of it is, life's happening, right? Everything's just happening. You're growing up, you're working, you're in school, you're, whatever it is, you have all of that happening at the same time. At some point, you have to decide to let go of the labels and just be yourself.
Yeah.
I remember I'm sort of I work out a lot, but I remember when I first started, I would have, post pictures of me working out and then pictures of me with a whole chocolate cake. And it would just like throw people, you're supposed to be healthy. You're supposed to be, I was like, no, I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to do what works for Cathy. And what works for Cathy is I'm going to go do this 2-hour workout and I'm going to eat a dozen cookies. Now that might not work for everybody, but that was me showing up authentically. And you will find like you can be a contradiction. Mm-hmm. You can be, a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time. And when you let go of the idea that I only can show up one way and you can show up fully yourself, it's so freeing that you will attract people that are attracted to the authentic you that you are now displaying. I'll give you another example. When I was in my corporate job, they would schedule these meetings at 8:00 in the morning. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not a morning person. So I suggest we move all meetings where I need to be present to 9. Because if you get me in here at 8, you're not going to get quality feedback from me. I'm not going to have any input until I wake all the way up. Now, you would think that would be a risk to say at your job, but it was the truth of who I authentically was at that time. I just wasn't functioning at 8:00 in the morning. I didn't function until 9. But what happened is my team learned to schedule things at 9 or, kind of pregame me between 8, but don't ask me any heavy questions until later. It's about being authentic. Now, there was a phase where I thought I had to show up And I would come in at 7:30 in the morning and I would be dragging and my productivity was down. And I kept trying to be something I wasn't. And it wasn't until I said, I'm a 9 to 5. I'm not this 7:30 to 3:30 or the 8 to 4. It's really about being able to authentically show up. And not only does it show up in your friendships, I've just given you a number of examples of where it shows up in your life, where in my fitness and in my health, I could not just be, I'm going to do everything healthy and never eat another cookie. I had to be, I'm going to work out and I'm going to earn this treat.
That's what attracted me to, because you had work out, eat cookies. I said, that's my girl. That's my girl right there.
You can do both. And it's a contradiction, but it's authentically who I am. And then the same in corporate. You think that's a risk to your career to tell your management, this is when I function. We're going to go 9 to 5. I'm not doing 7:30 to 3:30. Even if the whole team is doing 7:30 to 3:30. You'll get more productivity out of me here. So you have to be willing to show up everywhere authentically. And you'll show up in your friendships the same way. My friends know I'm the same way. They know if we go to a restaurant, I want to know what's on the dessert menu. I don't care what's on the main menu. You really, when they really know you, then, and you really know them, those are beautiful relationships, so that even when you hit the bumps, you're willing to come to the table and say, this happened, this is what I thought about it, and this is how I felt. And that, being able to say that and have that honest conversation is what really keeps friendships going. You both grow and evolve and deepen into the friendship.
Yeah, I remember we were talking before. One of the things that that brought back up for me was when life asked me how many more friendships were going to go into the relationship graveyard.
Yes.
Because like we were saying earlier, I would allow my story to keep me from showing up authentically, but then blame them for it when I was the one that left. And I remember when you were saying, you know what? They didn't leave you, you left them.
Yes. And you're telling yourself this story. They know what they did. They know they messed up. They know they shouldn't have done that. And it's all in your head. And your poor friend may be over there saying, I know something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. I can't fix it. And it's a total disconnect because you've been the judge and the jury already.
Oh, God. And I'm so glad life stopped me in my tracks, because had life not done it, I would have thrown away one of the most beautiful friendships ever. Yeah. If I had stayed in my head that way. But one of the things that the life held me accountable for was, okay, if you're going to reach out to this friend and try to talk about what caused you all to have the conflict, you're going to have to, whatever you tell that friend, like, all I want to do is just talk about it, let's get it out in the air, then you cannot hijack that friend if they say something you don't like. And so I had to run every scenario in my head of what would trigger me to react in a retaliatory way. I had to run every one of them in my head and make peace with it.
Yes.
So that whatever happened as a result of us talking, that person felt safe. I promised them, I'm not inviting you in here to prove that I was right. I just want us to talk it out. Then I had to make sure that I delivered on that there was integrity there. And I appreciate the fact that we both said, and I told him, I said, I'm not here trying to save the friendship. I'm here because I feel like if we both decide this is not right, we both need to be able to leave with dignity. So that when I see you on the street, you see me somewhere, there's no funny stuff, that the air is actually cleared. And she had the maturity to appreciate it. And we talked it through. And by the end, we both realized this really is a good friendship. Neither one of us wants to walk away from it. And so I appreciated that, because I had to admit, Suzette, you've been the one wrong. You've been the one making up these scenarios in your head.
And that's exactly right. You have to be willing to be wrong, because you've written all these stories in your head. You know you're right. And maybe, look, maybe you are right. But in order for you to hear them and really have this conversation, you have to be willing to be wrong. And you can't go to the table defensive. If your defense is the first act of war. So if you're coming there being defensive, you're not coming there to resolve it. You're coming there to be right. You're coming there to put them in their place. You're coming there with an agenda. But when you are open to being wrong, and when you free yourselves of your rules of what they should do and what they're supposed to do and how this was supposed to happen, then you can actually hear them when they give their perspective. And you're actually able to be curious and to maybe agree and see where you have had some missteps, but never from a place of defense. If you're feeling defensive, that is not the time to have the conversation, because when you're going to defend yourself, you know, you've got all your walls up and they're just talking at you, but they're not reaching you. So what that work you did with yourself to make sure you were at peace with all the things that, you know, could have triggered you before you had that conversation was so key to allow you to actually hear what your friend had to say. And then get to a point where the two of you can decide together whether this friendship goes to the next level, or if it is truly the end of a season, but in a peaceful way, the way you've said, instead of this drifting off that people do now, instead of this, you know, just ghosting on one or the other, you know, it is a decision that is made so that 5 years from now, if you ran into her, you know, and you decided to not be friends, you could speak. You could have a great conversation. You can enjoy a moment, and you're not leaving all of that energy out there. Because if you never do that, you carry it into the next friendship. You look at the next person suspiciously. And by the way, even though I focus on friendships, that applies to even romantic relationships. If you carry that energy, it will move with you into the next relationship. You'll be judging the next friend. You'll be judging the next significant other from the perspective of that relationship you didn't resolve.
Yeah, so, you brought that same victim position. Yeah. It's almost like you almost need to talk to the other person or work it out within yourself or with a therapist or coach so that you can not feel like the victim in the story. Because as long as you carry that with you, you never are free. Yeah. You never are free. Whereas if you drop that or you find that inner power, that inner resolve, where you give yourself the closure that you need to give yourself, then you can enter new relationships, new friendships open.
Yes.
Without that burdening that person with your expectations, but rather letting them show you.
Yes, and
who they are.
People are like, I don't understand why this keeps happening to me, you know, or you got that warning about how many friendships are you going to drop? How many times are you going to keep doing this? It's because you're still repeating that pattern and you're not letting go of it. And like I said, trying to push feelings aside or push it to the back, those things come forward time and again when you least expect it, or some little trigger that will bring it all forward. And it may not even be with the same person, but your reaction is going to be the same because the brain is efficient and it remembers, when I felt this way, this is what I think and this is what I do. Right? So if you're thinking this, it's going to trigger a similar reaction every time if you've never addressed those thoughts that have created these feelings. If you've not looked at those feelings, which are your warning system that something's going on in your head that you need to address, that you need to clear up, that you need to work through. And if you keep carrying it around, it'll just follow with you like a heavy purse from one friendship to the next, from one relationship to the next. So,
oh, that's so good, y'all. This is what you would get with Cathy. And I'm telling you, she's trying to grow our friendships all the way up, and I love it because I think it's time for us to start having some real, authentic relationships. I think we are at our core yearning for them.
Yes.
And so I'm so grateful that that's what you bring to the table. It's so needed. So Cathy, as we bring this to a close, because I got so many notes. I'm like, okay, we're going to have to do a part 2 at some point because I have so many notes about friendship. But as we bring this to a close, what do you want the final take? Well, first, how can people get in contact with you? And then what do you want the final takeaway of the listeners to be from our conversation?
Well, you can reach me at www.cathycounsel.com or email me directly, Cathy with a C, at cathycounsel.com. And one of the takeaways, or the key takeaway that I want everyone to leave this episode with, is that your great relationships start with you and the relationship you have with yourself. What you show up as every day, you bring that to your relationships, your friendships, and they will thrive. So I always work with my clients to make sure that we are addressing how they think about themselves, feel about themselves, and how they show up first before we get into building their circle.
That is fantastic. And all of that while eating cookies.
Yeah. Indeed.
Cathy, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
I've enjoyed this immensely. We'll definitely can do it again.
Indeed. And listeners, just in case no one has told you, I want you to know you're worthy, you're worth it. You are more than enough. Bye. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Vernon. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber. And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, you are enough.